And welcome once again to another edition of the Court-Martail podcast, a very special edition today, as it's something a little off the beaten path, something we don't normally do here at the Court-Martail podcast. First of all, it's a Tuesday. Hello. And second of all, we're not going to be talking a whole lot of wrestling today. We're going to be talking about our good friend of ours, a dear friend of the podcast, and myself. I've known this guy for forever, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. We mentioned on the special announcement that we had JoshAgeddon, our good friend, who I'm going to give the intro for here in a second, was in a little bit of a, I believe I called it a vehicular excursion. So this entire podcast is going to be dedicated to the man who kicked out at 2 in the face of a vehicular excursion. The man who stood and saw death and the Grim Reaper right in the eye and said, "I've seen you on CIW and I know your record's garbage and I know I can take you on." And he did everything he possibly could muster to rally, kick out at 2, make the comeback, and is now here with us today. He's a man who's been, oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. He's a man who's been diagnosed with inoperable, uncurable rectal cancer, but only by those who've watched his YouTube channel. He is the man who is still with us here, thank God, JoshAgeddon. Welcome to the show, my man. It's good to know that you are okay.
I also have AIDS, if anyone's wondering.
Well, that was unrelated. I did not know that. That's completely unrelated to the podcast. But that's
college changes you, man.
Yeah, well, that I know. That is a true statement. But in any case, welcome to the show. And before we get into the whole nitty-gritty of this whole thing, how you feeling, mate? It's been what, about 4 or 5 days now?
Yeah, it's been. It happened on Thursday, so it's been about 5 days.
So at the time of this recording, because this is going to go up a wee bit later than the time of recording, it will have been about a week and a half since it had gone down. But as you're hearing it, it's only been about 4 days.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling overall?
I feel normal for the most part. My neck is kind of stiff. I have a bunch of cuts in my hand, but they're healing.
Yep.
The most noticeable thing is I have 4 staples in the back of my head.
Yeah, and we'll get to that here in a minute because I have tons of delicious graphics that I hope will not get flagged by YouTube for whatever reason.
Too violent.
Although there really isn't anything that's overly graphic, and considering the kind of stuff we cover for wrestling. This is like, but not to downplay this whatsoever. So before we get started with all of that, why don't we just, for those of you who have never, if this is for some reason your very first edition of the Court-Martail podcast, why don't you give us a breakdown, JoshAgeddon, about just our relationship, how we kind of met, how things transformed here, and just the connection that we've established from the get-go.
All right, so basically, we met because we both loved a different CAW wrestling show called The Magnation.
Yes, that's Create a Wrestler for those smarks who are not internet video game smarks.
Yeah, so they were big around 2012, 2013, 2014.
Yep.
Somewhere around then, me and Sean got introduced because we were both big fans of the show. Yep. We had somewhat similar personalities, and we just talked back and forth. And Sean was like, "Hey, I'm going to make my own wrestling show." And I was like, "Hey, I'm also going to make my own wrestling show." So we started sending test videos back and forth to each other. And the first match on my show, TAW, that I ever recorded was Ronald McDonald versus Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Which Sean got a kick out of that.
I did.
And that was just me recording my TV with my iPhone. It looks like garbage.
Wasn't it an iPod? It wasn't even an
iPod. Yeah, it was an iPod.
Yeah,
it wasn't even an iPhone. It was an iPod.
Oh, 2013. But but that was like such a special time for me too, because it's like I was so infatuated with it, and I'd found somebody who had that equal level of passion on like the equal playing, on that same level, which was so cool for me because then I had somebody to kind of test the waters. Like, is this working? Is this not working? And that was really instrumental in what I was going for what I was doing in CIW, not to promote that, but there is a link in the description, as well as TAW Gaming as well, which is when that started. But that early period of us really getting to know each other, that was so, I guess, surface level. You know what I mean?
Somewhat, I guess. Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know, because we had really not known each other, but our love of wrestling is what brought us together, and then that eventually led to us doing the wrestling reviews.
Yeah. So basically, on my YouTube channel originally was just me doing wrestling videos. Then I was like, I have recording equipment. I can do other stuff.
Yep.
And one of the things I started doing was reviewing wrestling shows. And Sean was like, hey, I watched the show and I have opinions on it. Can me and you do that? I think I asked you. I think I reached out to you and asked if you wanted to be on. I'm pretty sure that I did not go out and say, hey, I have opinions. Air my opinions. Although here we are on my podcast doing exactly that. But, yeah.
You know, how much has changed in 8 years.
And at some point he was like, hey, I'm going to be doing my own podcast because the idea I got for it was pretty much the Mag Nation used to have a podcast, the Breaking the Fourth Wall podcast.
Which I was a part of.
Yes, I do remember that. And actually, you interviewed Magnitude or Trevor.
I interviewed Trevor. It was my idea to do that. You know, I'm not making this whole interview with you about me, but I had the idea to do that with Trevor. I'm like, let's do a podcast, because it was also at that time when, you know, not to air too much of Mag Nation history, but there was some turmoil on their front.
Yeah.
Between a couple people. So there was a little bit. So it was something that I knew was going to help the Mag Nation, which it did. That got quite a lot of views. People really enjoyed that little segment I had with them. But that was kind of that collaboration, I guess, working for the Mag Nation a little bit. You know, especially as they were starting Jack Nation Redemption, and you and Shadow had commentary, and then myself and Chris Cones had commentary, so we were like working the same shows. And I think that those moments where we really got to see each other's work is really what propelled us to want to do those podcasts together, reviewing the shows.
Yeah, and then you came out with your podcast. I remember you tried to start your podcast earlier than you actually did, but there was some issues. Like, I remember the first thing we ever recorded for a podcast for your show, the audio got corrupted.
Yep.
And then it took like almost a year for you to start this podcast.
Yep.
And thankfully, for the most part, it's worked.
Yes. Yes, I've been, thankfully everything's gone well, and I do have to make a quick shout out to my boy A Bizzle, who you've heard on the show before. He's been on CIW commentary, as well as on this podcast doing live streams. So he has been around. He's the one who patched up all my tech and really made that worth what it is. So thankfully it's been successful. And you've been on it now probably 7 or 8 times, I have to imagine.
Yeah, and it's always a fun time.
Yeah.
It's always a fun time.
Oh, yeah, and we've been doing the wrestling reviews now for, 7 years, maybe? And
I think the first one we did together was, like, SummerSlam 2017 or something like that.
Yeah, wow. So, yeah,
Good God.
4 or 5 years worth of wrestling podcast. Yeah, no, you're right, because the first one we did was Jinder Mahal facing Shinsuke Nakamura.
Oh, God. Remember when he was WWE champion?
Yeah. And that was
because I'd like to forget.
I wish that Jinder had been more pushed to that point. Is more what I would call that. I wish that he had been better built.
Back during my seething hatred of Braun Strowman.
Well, and seething hatred. You know, that's the funniest thing too. It's like, I think part of what also made us close was that we were involved in several wrestling chats, and because of your several seething hatreds, you didn't make a whole lot of close friends in those chats.
No, I got kicked out of chats several times.
And I always thought that was unfair, because for the whole portion of, I never thought that anything you said was that controversial, first of all. But there was an all in all, I guess, like, in those chats, it was a refusal of accepting a contrasting opinion, and so they just lashed out. And and a lot of times I would, like, talk to you afterwards and be like, hey man, that was bullshit. It's like, that was, you know, I don't know why they did that to you. And I think that also brought us closer, and then the reviews kept going, and that only made things even tighter.
To be fair, I do think a couple times that I did get kicked out, I deserved it, because I do have a big mouth. And remember, I have been permanently suspended from Twitter. So
yeah, but anyone can be permanently suspended from Twitter at this point.
yeah, like sometimes it is a load of crap. Sometimes it's my own fault.
Yeah, but you know, at the same time, it was in those moments that really, like, I knew that what we had there and the dynamic that we had, I knew that it was going to be something that was really going to stand the test of time in the weirdest way, you know, and it has, you know, and here we are, and that's kind of what leads us to why I have you on the show today, because you are so important to not only the Court-Martail podcast, but also to me just as one of the closest friends I have in the wrestling circle, that I wanted to talk about everything that happened. So I want you to first take us through the rest of that day before it happened.
That Thursday before the accident already sucked because, as you know, I have canker sores in my mouth.
Canker sores suck.
And for some reason, over the past couple weeks, I've just had a flare up of them. Like on my bottom lip, I had 5 or 6, and on my upper lip, I had 3.
Wow.
So I was miserable.
That's a lot, dude.
Yes, and I don't know why. So that day, I went to the hospital. I went to the doctor's office to get them checked out, and they sent me to this other place with a prescription. But the prescription wasn't going to be ready till hours later in the day. And so I was already in a bad mood because my mouth was hurting and I had to wait to go get this mouthwash. And me and my mom got into an argument over the phone. And so I was already in a bad mood. So it was about 2:00 and I was like, all right, I'm going to go to the place called Mobley's Drugs. It's in Lancaster, South Carolina.
That's a great name for a drugstore. Mobley's Drugs.
Mobley's Drugs.
You know what's up. When you go to Mobley's Drugs, you know what the hell's up.
There's actually a basement. Anyway.
I bet there is.
So
for some reason, all the sales happen outside the building.
Yeah. So, I got in my truck, and my plan was I'm going to go down there, I'm going to get my mouthwash, I'm going to use it, and then I'm going to do my homework and watch a little bit of TV, maybe edit a video or two, and then I'll be on my way.
Yeah.
So I can even tell you, I was in my truck, and I just passed my church, and the road I was on, it's like a straight road, and there's woods on both sides. So it's like a wood arch.
Yeah.
Like a forest on both sides. So I was driving, and I was, of course, listening to Marilyn Manson.
Which is arguably your favorite artist of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can even tell you what song I was listening to. I was listening to his song "Get Your Gun" from his first album, Portrait of an American Family. And it was about to switch to The Nobodies from Hollywood, his 4th album. Before it could switch to the next song, this person was driving towards me and crossed into my lane. So I'm like, oh shit. I try to drive out of the way, and all of this happened in a split second. I can't even tell you what the vehicle looked like. I think it was blue. I don't know if it was a car, and I don't know if it was a truck.
Yeah.
So I swerve away trying to dodge, and I end up off the road. So I try to get back on the road, and I lose complete control of the vehicle. I go all the way across the road spinning, and my truck flips, and it knocks me unconscious.
Wow.
And also, I think one reason why it was because it was raining as well. It was raining all day.
Oh, so it was wicked slick.
It was, I think I hydroplaned a little bit as well. So I overcorrected, and then I hydroplaned, and then I flipped.
Yeah. Wow.
So I'm driving. This happened, and the last thing I remember before I got knocked out was the song stopped because the CD broke because of the crash.
Oh, inside the car?
Yeah, inside the truck, the split second before I was knocked out, I heard the song cut off, and I was like, that's not good.
Now, were you knocked out on impact, or was it everything had stopped and then you passed out?
Yeah, I was knocked out on impact.
Wow. Before we continue, I just want to, at this moment, I want to put the first graphic of the actual damage of the truck I want to pop that right here so you can all see what the aftermath of that accident was. Now, was this on like an interstate, or was this like a regular piece of straightaway lanes?
It was a regular straightaway road. I was going 45 miles per hour.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it was weird because I crashed, and then all of a sudden I was in a dream. And I can't remember what the dream was about, but I do remember thinking, I was driving a couple seconds ago, and now I'm dreaming. This can't be good.
Well, the fact that you even had that thought told you that you were probably in some sort of limbo. But
yeah. So the next thing I know, I'm standing up on the road outside my truck, like across the road, and I'm sinking into a mud puddle. And I look down, and my shoes are being ruined by mud, and I'm immediately like, really, my shoes? The first thing I remember is getting mad because my shoes had mud on them. Wow. And there's this police officer trying to talk to me, and I can barely understand what he's saying because I'm concussed.
Oh, without a doubt. Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
So I look across the road, and there's like a bunch of people that stopped and make sure I was okay. I'll get into that later. But so I look across the road, and my truck is up against the woods on its side. So I can see the underside of my truck facing towards me.
And you have no idea how you got out of the car. Like that was all just instinctual.
Honestly, if I had if my eyes were like a camera, you would think I teleported.
Wow. That's crazy.
It was weird. Like, I didn't even wake up lying down. I woke up standing up.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling. The fact you were just in an accident like that, and then your next conscious thought, you're like mobile.
Yeah. And so I'm just standing there, and the cop is like, what happened? And I'm like, someone pulled out in front of me, like driving towards me, and I tried to dodge, and I wrecked. And like a bunch of people are like, are you okay? Are you okay? There was a bunch of cars around because a bunch of people stopped to make sure I was okay. And apparently, I don't remember this, but someone stopped, like not a cop, but like a first responder, got out of their car, got into my truck, and pulled me out.
Oh, really?
I don't remember this, probably because I was unconscious, but I'm grateful to that person.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful. But the person who the person who caused this accident did not stop, did not even slow down, and they got away.
Hit and run, man. That's the worst.
Yeah, which is just fantastic.
That is the actual worst.
Yeah. So, I take out my phone and I call my mom, and I let her know what's happening, and I tell her, "Hey, Mom, I'm okay, but I've been in an accident. Someone pulled out in front of me. The truck is wrecked, and they're putting me in an ambulance. I'll be fine, but I was in an accident." And of course, my mom's trying not to freak out. And then they put me on a stretcher, and then I'm in the ambulance. I don't remember this, but my mom called me back, and she was asking me what was going on. And I could not tell you what happened. I could not tell you where I was going. I probably couldn't tell you what day of the week it was.
Yeah.
It was like someone turned my lights off. So I don't even remember her calling me a second time. So I'm clearly concussed. Next thing I know, my little brother Alex is in the ambulance with me, and it was like he teleported.
This is so strange.
Being concussed, I've never been concussed before. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like you're teleporting, other people are teleporting, and like you remember something and then you immediately forget it, and then you're like, how did I forget that?
Yeah. Wow.
It's very, very weird. So I'm in the ambulance, and then I'm like, my brother comes, he makes sure that I'm okay, and he calls Mom, and he goes back to the house. And my mom at this time, she's in North Carolina with her mom. She's visiting her mom and her brother. So she gets in the car and comes back home. So I'm in the ambulance, and I'm talking to the ambulance driver, and I'm like, and I remember telling him, listen, I don't care about how my truck is. Please tell me you can get all of my CDs.
You do care a lot about Marilyn Manson.
Yes, and I also had a bunch of Black Veil Bride CDs, a bunch of Toby Mac CDs. Like, all of my favorite artists are in that truck. And my Blue Snowball microphone that I use for all of my videos was also in the truck. It was destroyed.
Oh, man. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, so...
Was it one of those balls? Was it one of, like, the blue balls that you have, or was it one of the, like, the longer one?
It was the ball that came with the tripod.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But my mom did order me another one, and it'll be here on, like, the 22nd.
Hey,
so that's not that big a deal. And my favorite toboggan or beanie, it was a black, the black and gray beanie that I have?
Yes.
It was lost because I was wearing it when the accident happened. It's probably out in the woods somewhere right now.
Fair.
So then I'm like, oh crap, I need to call my girlfriend. So I call her, and she answers, and she's like, hey.
What a time.
And I'm like, oh God, this is not going to go well. And I'm like, Andy, I need you to listen to me. Do not panic. I was in an accident, but I'm alive, and I'm going to be okay. I was in an accident, and immediately she starts hyperventilating. Naturally. So I tell her what's going on. I tell her that I'm being taken to the hospital, and I hang up. So she gets, and she lives in Lexington. I live in Heath Springs.
South Carolina.
She lives in Lexington. Yeah.
South Carolina.
So she lives about an hour and a half away from me. And she does not have a car. So she calls her mom, and she gets her mom to drive her over to my house to take care of me.
Wow.
So, and
that's a keeper.
Yes, she is the best girlfriend. But, and I talked to her mom, and her mom was like, Joshua, you have no idea. She was pacing around back and forth to the house. She was hyperventilating. She was sobbing. So I didn't mean to scare her, but I felt like she should know.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's one of those hard things because you never want to induce that kind of fear and panic in somebody. But, in my family, we have a phrase when there's some sort of trauma or something like that. If I got to know, you got to know. It's just part of loving somebody. It's part of being family.
And I'm planning on marrying this woman one day.
Oh.
And my mom was like, I wish that you would have let me tell her. And I'm thinking, if someone other than me tells her, that's probably going to scare her more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm not talking.
Yeah. No, I think that was a good call.
Yeah, I beat my mom to the punch. And so then they took me to the hospital. And they're, like, running tests on me. They're like, yeah, you're probably concussed. I have a gash in the back of my head that's bleeding. I have cuts all over my hand. And they take me into the hospital. And, of course, because of COVID, everyone's wearing masks, and only a certain number of people are supposed to be in the hospital at a certain time.
Right, which makes it all the more frustrating for those who want to know how you're doing.
Yes.
Because they just want, you were just in an accident, and they want to know that you're okay, God forbid. Thank God you were.
Yeah. So when I get to the hospital, I'm joking around with the doctors. So clearly I'm out of the woods, so to speak.
Right.
So
and also literally.
Yes. Yes. So they take me to the room where they scan me to make sure, like, to see what injuries I have. And they hook me up to this saline drip, and the doctor's like, you're going to feel warm, and you're going to have a metallic taste in your mouth, and you're going to think you peed yourself.
Wow.
Like, that's a weird thing to tell someone.
What a three-hit KO.
So they give me the saline drip, and I start feeling a little warm. I never really felt like I had a metallic taste. But I swear to God, I thought I diarrheaed myself.
Oh no. Oh, no.
So the doctor came over to me, and she was like, how do you feel? And I was like, I don't feel like I peed myself. I feel like I crapped in my pants. And she was like, I've never heard someone say that before.
Oh, that is not the thing you want to hear in a hospital.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. Oh, that's new.
It was such a weird day. It was such a weird day. So then so the reason why they did that is so they could get a better picture of my skeleton and my organs and everything. Pretty much the only thing that was damaged was my brain because I had a slight concussion and the cut on my head. Other than that, I was fine. So they wheel me to the room, and my dad's in there. Now, my mom and my dad are divorced. They're not together. And I didn't know my dad was going to be there. And the way this hospital does it is I was not allowed to have more than one visitor. Not at a time. Only one person could visit me, then no one else could.
All right.
So with my dad there, he was like, yeah, they told me that it was like first come, first serve. My dad just happened to get there first.
Right.
So I'm in there talking to my dad, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And then all of a sudden I get some text from my mom. They won't let her in the building. And my mom is very much a protective mama bear.
Fair.
I understand. I'm surprised that she did not murder half the hospital staff.
Yeah.
She was pissed.
I could understand.
Because she couldn't get in to see her baby, who was just in an accident. B, her ex-husband that she hates got to see him first, and is why she can't see her son. So yeah, my mom was pissed.
I get it.
So and after a while, my dad has to leave because my dad just bought a trailer, and he's getting it worked out, so he had to go back to his trailer. He couldn't stay there all day, and I wasn't like in danger. They just needed to clean me up and everything, then send me home.
Right.
So he left, and I'm just sitting in there bored. And I asked, and the TV is on, and nothing interesting is playing. It's like a news station, and I asked the nurse, "Can you turn the TV off?" And she's like, "You have a remote right there," and she turns it off for me, and I'm like, God, I really must be concussed. So then, like an hour later, I'm still sitting there. So I turn the TV back on, and I flip across the channels, and John Wick is playing. So I start watching John Wick for a while.
That's fair.
So then the doctor comes in, and he's like, "Yeah, we've looked at your stuff. You do probably have a slight concussion, and you have a bad gash on the back of your head. So we're going. Have you ever had staples before?"
I've never had staples before. And before we show this photo, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is not particularly graphic, I don't think, by any means, but there are people who are squeamish out there, so if you are not for this sort of thing, then this sort of thing will not be for you. We're only going to show it for about 5 seconds, so tell them about them staples.
So the doctor asked me, "So Joshua, have you ever had staples before?" And I respond, "No, but I've had plenty of stitches in my life." And he's like, "Well, staples are a little bit different. Stitches, you have to like sew them in there. Staples, I press a button, it goes in there, it hurts for like a couple seconds, and then it's done. It's quick." So he comes over and he's like, "Based on the size of the cut, I need to put 3 staples in." And they've already cleaned out the wound. So he's like, they do not give me any kind of numbing medication for it.
Okay, so you're feeling a little bit of all this, but is it safe to say that adrenaline up to this point had been a lot of this?
Probably.
Yeah.
Although I think me sitting there for an hour watching John Wick allowed my adrenaline to dissipate a little bit.
Right. Well, John Wick is an exciting movie.
It was actually I think it was John Wick Chapter 2.
I did not see John Wick Chapter 2, so I cannot comment.
It's not as good as the first one, but it's really good.
Fair enough.
But so I'm not numbed at all. I can feel everything. He puts 3 staples in my head, back to back. But the wound still won't stop bleeding, and he looks at it for a second, and I'm thinking he's going to have to put a 4th one in. And then he says, "Sorry, bud, I got to put a 4th one in."
Well,
and
you called it.
In there, and I'm like, "Ow." And it was like, "There we go, stop bleeding." And I'm like, "Yay."
Joy.
Joy to the world, ladies and gentlemen. So after that, they look at some more of my films. They finish cleaning me up, and then after a while, they come back in there and they're like, "All right, we've written you some prescriptions, and you're free to go." So they release me. My mom takes me home, and my girlfriend is waiting on me at the house, and I pretty much just slept for the rest of the day.
Wow.
So, yeah, that Thursday was not my most favorite day.
That's a hell of a story, man, and it's a hell of a you know, you really got to count your blessings, you know, as far as I was concerned, cuz I remember when you shot me the text, you know, and that couldn't have been more than maybe 2 hours afterward. What was it, like 4 o'clock maybe?
I think I messaged you like 2 hours after the fact.
Yeah, it was pretty shortly. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna look it up because this is an actual event, so it's good to be factual, and you must have all the correct information here. So I'm going to look at this bag now. I think you sent it to the virtual Yidville chat because we have several chats. We chat a lot. There's a lot of talking in what we do.
Yeah.
And coming up this week. Okay, so while I'm looking for this, so when you're that next morning, after it had all been said and done, and you're back and you realize this has all happened, what's running through your mind? What's the first thing that comes through your mind the first time you wake up after this accident?
Well, I was worried because everyone was like, you're going to feel so much worse in the morning. So when I woke up, I felt pretty much the same. My neck was really stiff. My head hurt. So I was like, and mostly I was worried because I had a bunch of homework to catch up on. So I was bummed because I wasn't going to be able to do that for the whole day.
Right.
And I just had no energy, and I was kind of like, I just want to go back to bed.
Fair.
And I was also pissed because my CDs were destroyed.
All of them?
I was pissed. I think my dad was able to save 4 of them, but the 4 that he saved were my least favorite of my collection.
Oh, that's brutal. That is brutal.
And one of the ones he saved was scratched up and unplayable before the accident.
So you really only got 3 of them.
My luck sucks, ladies and gentlemen.
That's that hurts.
But also, so back to the thing about the canker sores, I was on my way to go get some mouthwash. My mom, since I was in an accident, my mom went to go get the mouthwash for me.
Right.
So she brought it back to the house, and I've been using it ever since. I had about 9 or 8 canker sores. Since I've been using that mouthwash, I have 1.
Excellent. That's some good news. I love positivity.
I want that shit stockpiled.
Yeah. Jesus. So we should honestly, I hope that they short that stock and let's bump that stock up. Let's make this the next GameStop. Is that mouthwash?
Put that in my veins instead of saline.
Yeah. That was
at least I won't feel like I've shit myself.
Well, you don't know that yet. We haven't gotten that extensive of testing. All we know is that it works as a canker sore mouthwash.
Yeah. Canker sores are so annoying. It's not even like searing, I want to die pain. It's just constant annoyance.
Pestering.
Making your life more miserable pain.
Yeah. And it's, so here we are 4 days removed from this thing. Has anything changed since these 4 days? Like, have you felt any differently? Just because this is a pretty crazy, in a lot of ways, people call those life-altering events. Have you felt that at all?
Not particularly. These kind of things don't really bother me. I mean, I've been in accidents before. I've had some close calls before.
Yep.
This kind of stuff doesn't really rattle me.
I feel you.
But I will say that every night ever since then, since I've gone to bed, for those of you that don't know, I'm a religious person. I'm a Christian, which may surprise some of you. Every single night since I've went to bed, I have prayed and thanked God that He kept me alive during this ordeal.
I hear you.
Because I think it's both luck and God that I'm not dead right now.
Well, it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain sometimes in these moments. I mean, it's one of those unexplainable things,
Yeah, and if you saw pictures of the truck,
and I want to show.
Side is smashed in.
Yes, here's the second picture.
If someone was with me in the passenger seat, they would be dead right now.
Yeah,
I am beyond grateful that I was alone.
Yeah. Have you driven since?
Yes, I have.
How's that been?
I was a little like, I hope I don't have like PTSD or anything like that. But it's been normal. I've been driving my mom's car to go get groceries every once in a while. Like we have like a mini store, a mini mart, like a mile from my house. So it's not like a long drive.
Yeah.
And actually today, my dad is actually buying me a new car.
Hey!
And I test drove it today, and I drove it for like a couple miles, and it actually drives really good.
Nice.
And it has a USB port and an aux cord, so I don't have to rebuy all of those CDs.
Yeah, that's always helpful. I made a similar upgrade because what was the make and brand of the truck? And now
the truck.
Go ahead.
The truck was a 2001 Toyota.
Okay. It's
no, it was a 2001 Ford. It was a 2001 Ford.
Okay.
I'm not very good at vehicles, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
I never have been.
And now I have to make the joke. It's very obvious because you got a Ford, and that's coming from somebody who had one. I've been there. I've been there.
And you'll all love this. I went from a 2001 Ford truck to a 2011 Ford Fusion car.
But I want you to know, truck nerds out there, your insults literally mean nothing to him because he does not understand what you're talking about.
I do not get cars. In fact, I hate driving. I hate cars. And this is actually the 6th accident that I've been in my life.
Jesus God, man.
Only one of which was my fault.
Yeah. Well, that's how it usually is.
Yeah.
You know.
But and I don't know if you know this, I never learned how to ride a bike.
I understand. There's quite a few people I know who they just never learn.
The first time I tried to ride a bike, I was 10. I almost lost an ear.
Understandable. You know why?
You know those wooden poles that hold fences up?
Yes.
I smacked into it head first and like dragged all the way down by my ear.
Ow.
So it almost ripped my ear off.
Yeah. Yeah, bicycles, it's the weirdest thing with bicycles. I like biking, but I haven't biked in so long because I got into so many bike wrecks that I almost like broke my leg because my leg somehow got caught between like every angle of the bike. Like my leg was basically sandwiched and like laced through like a double helix into the bicycle.
Ooh.
And somehow it didn't break. I didn't even sprain anything. It like went and I was able to get it out.
My brother a couple years ago was riding his bike and his foot like slipped off the pedal and he like stomped the cement ground.
Oh, ow.
And almost broke his leg.
Yeah, ow. It's
and he was like, yeah, and I was just like, oh, because I've stomped hard before. If you've ever like stomped the ground,
yes.
Imagine doing that full force on the road.
Yeah. Hurts.
Imagine Seth Rollins trying to curb stomp the road.
Yeah. You can't curb stop a curb. Well,
it was an actual curb stomp.
And you know what? And I guess that's as good a spot as any to say that, you know, thankfully you did kick out at 2, mate. And
yeah.
You know, I'm so happy that you were able to come on here. And I thank you for being on this podcast and sharing your story here with the listeners of the Court-Martail podcast. I know I speak for all of us here to say it's good to have you still up and running, mate.
Oh, hell yeah.
It really is, because this place would not have been the same without you, and I'll be damned if I'll be hosting a tribute show. No. I will not let you do that to me.
Yeah, like, I'm very grateful that the worst of it was a concussion and staples.
Yeah. And especially considering, I mean, you saw the damage, folks. Considering what happened to that vehicle, by many rights, some would consider that to be about as close to a miracle as it can get.
It was not smashed. It was smushed.
Yeah. I mean, there was not a whole lot of truck left when it was all said and done.
The first time I saw the thing after I regained consciousness, it was on its side leaning up against the woods.
Yeah.
Trees were holding it up.
So you must have hit several trees when you must have made a hell of an impact. But you know what? You made a hell of an impact, but you are not going to be working for Impact because you kicked out at 2, sir. And that and that means
it's funny you say that because I was actually watching Bound for Glory 2012 earlier today. I don't know why.
See, well, sometimes the fates just align. And speaking of good wrestling shows, which the jury is still out on Bound for Glory 2012 or whether it was or not, we have a great show called the Totally awesome wrestling gaming channel, also known as TAW Gaming. Tell us what's going on with TAW, because I assume you're still running things now that you're back up and on the mend.
Yeah. So, for those of you that don't know, I just released, like last week, like a couple of days before my accident, I released my big TAW Elevation pay-per-view event, and it turned out really well.
It did.
The Magnation's Demon Chicken made an appearance on the show.
He did?
And that made everyone that was watching pop, and I was so proud of that.
Yes, it did. That was cool.
And so since that, I'm also going to be making a video explaining what I'm going to be doing next.
All right.
So
this is the hype video for the hype video.
yes. But I will say that since then I uploaded, because for the past couple weeks I've been doing like a quasi-news show where I talk about random things on the internet that interest me. I released a new video for it today talking about the Marilyn Manson controversy, the Snyder Cut trailer, Sonic 2's announcement date, and the Twisted Metal TV show.
Yep.
And you know who they've casted as Sweet Tooth?
Who did they cast as Sweet Tooth?
Will Arnett.
What?
That was my reaction.
What?
That was my reaction.
BoJack Horseman is going to be Sweet Tooth.
Yes, apparently.
Job from Arrested Development is going to be Sweet Tooth.
From The Office, yes.
Dude, how?
You know who else they asked for if they wanted to be a Sweet Tooth? You know who else they considered?
Is it Vin Diesel?
Anthony Mackie. They considered Anthony Mackie to be Sweet Tooth.
I mean, that kind of just seems like a role that, like, well, if Tom Hardy wasn't already Bane, but Tom Hardy's already Bane, I really don't want him.
Dude,
but
Tom Hardy as Sweet Tooth.
I'm just saying.
Oh my god. Or Vin Diesel.
I was gonna, maybe like a Vin Diesel from the '90s, Vin Diesel, early 2000, like pacifier Vin Diesel. I don't know about like dad gut barbecuing out on the patio, Vin Diesel.
You know what?
What?
You know what? Give me. This would really entertain me. Give me John Cena as Sweet Tooth.
I bet he would. He'd make it he'd take a shot at it.
Oh yeah.
He would take a shot at it, but no. You know who I'd rather see John Cena play? I'd rather him be what's his name? I'd rather him be Warthog.
Warthog? Oh yeah, that would be cool too, General Warthog.
Yeah. I'd rather him be Warthog, but speaking of John Cena, and this is a great way to kind of run into this because you did mention you had a concussion. We're going to close this show today, this very spectacularly, graciously thankful edition of the Court-Martail podcast. I'm going to give you a little Rorschach test.
Oh no.
So I have a list of names here. I'm going to give the name. You just tell me the first thing that comes to mind when I mention these particular people. Fair enough?
Oh dear.
First thing that comes to mind. Can't think about it. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Shawn Michaels.
Super Kick.
Rob Van Dam.
Weed.
Lita.
That one suicide dive where she almost broke her neck.
Braun Strowman.
Garbage.
Hulk Hogan.
Overrated.
Skylar Greenberg.
Jew.
Wow. Keep that in. Keep that in. Don't you dare cut that out.
Please keep that in.
Keep that in. Wow. Okay, Skylar, we love you so much. That was so funny. That was on. That was.
This is why.
It's a Rorschach test. It was the first thing that came to mind. It's a Rorschach test. Amazing. Okay. As we recompose ourselves here, Nia Jax.
Hole.
John Cena.
The Fred movie.
Ric Flair.
Old.
Matt Riddle.
Wasted potential.
That took so long for you to come up with something.
I literally couldn't think of anything.
That's sad. That's very revealing, Matt Riddle.
Yes.
Matt Riddle.
It's not his fault.
Bro. That's all I got. Doink the Clown.
Cruiserweight.
What?
Because remember I put one of his clowns on your viewer Skylar's show, and I was like, now they have a cruiserweight division.
That was Dink the Clown.
They're practically the same person.
No, Dink and Doink. No, Doink the Clown is the actual big clown, the guy that Matt Bourne played. That was actually the sadistic clown.
He cloned himself.
But Dink is the little one. Doink is the big one who actually could work until the original Doink got fired, and then they just made him a goof.
They have a clown cloning machine.
All right, I'm accepting clown cloning machine for your answer on that one. Mick Foley.
Sock.
Corey Graves.
Tattoos.
JBL. Also revealing.
No idea.
Also Cowboy. Texas. Stocks. Let's see. CM Punk.
Pipe bomb.
Relic. There's only one acceptable answer for this.
Christmas.
Okay, all right. That's also an acceptable answer for that. I would have also accepted killer spelled backwards. Okay, let's see here. AJ Styles.
Phenomenal.
Robert Roode.
Bobby sounds better.
Roman Reigns.
Samoan guy.
Austin.
Aquaman.
Austin Aries.
Brainbuster, which I almost had.
And that, my friends, is how we're going to close the show. You cannot write it better than that. Austin Aries with the Brainbuster, what Mr. Geddon just barely came back from.
Yeah.
But you're here. Thank God. JoshAgeddon, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for being a part of this, and thank you for remaining alive, sir.
Yes. I am also very thankful to be alive right now.
And we will see you next time under better circumstances, let's hope.
Yes.
All right, and with that said, that is going to be it for this edition, this very special edition, Tuesday edition of the Court-Martail podcast. We will see you on Friday for whatever we're limping to the barn with. So with that being said, I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, here with the man who kicked out at 2, JoshAgeddon, and we'll see you next time right after this commercial break.